I paid for my mom, dad, and sister to come to my wedding, but they totally bylaid. I blew the whistle on what happened, and wow, did their lives get messy. They always say your wedding day is supposed to be the best day ever, right? All flowers and giggles and happy tears. That's what I pictured when I started planning. I booked the place way ahead of time, this sweet little spot, not too expensive, a rooftop garden with fairy lights. I even made sure there were veggie options for my sister and champagne for mom. I carefully picked the menu to make it easy for my family to get there, and I even moved the wedding date closer to where they lived. I trusted them completely. When they said they couldn't afford to come, I helped out, of course. I walked them through everything, even when they kept hesitating. Hotel rooms, plane tickets, clothes, I covered it all, even her husband's stuff so my sister wouldn't have to go alone. I told myself it was worth it, you know? Family's supposed to be there for you. Little did I know what showing up meant to them was a whole different story than what it meant to me. Wedding day, I woke up early. My best friend from way back, we used to swap Pokémon cards on the sidewalk as kids, texted that he and his partner had landed okay. They'd paid for their own motel and tickets, just happy to be there. No issues with my parents' flight, thank goodness. I kept hitting refresh on the airline app, waiting. The plane landed on time. Okay, I figured they'll be here any minute. I was a total wreck, like a teenager waiting for their first date, pacing in the dressing room, peeking out the window every few seconds. The officiant showed up at 3:00, gave me a sweet little smile, and asked if we were ready. I told her we might need a few more minutes. Maybe they hit traffic, maybe their phones died. I called, got voicemail, tried again. Nothing. My hair was done, my bouquet was sitting by the window. The photographer snapped some pictures. I managed a smile for the camera. Checked my phone again, still nothing. My best friend poked his head in, gave a little knock. Around 3:30, they started asking if we wanted to get going. My throat tightened as I looked at him. My dad was supposed to walk me down the aisle. He was all set. I plastered on this huge, fake smile and said, "Let's just wait 5 more minutes." He pretended he didn't see my hands shaking, just nodded and hung out with me. I called again. Voicemail at 3:37, then finally my phone rang. Mom, I almost dropped it. I grabbed it so fast. "Oh, hey, sweetie," she said. "So sorry we couldn't make it." I just blinked, completely speechless. What happened?" She laughed like I was being ridiculous. "Your sister's brother-in-law had a poetry reading. It was a big deal to him, and she didn't want to go alone. We had to be there for her. You know how family is." I didn't say a word. She broke the silence with a smile. "You get it, don't you?" I could hear my dad chuckling from somewhere. "Maybe next time," I heard him say. I was trying to wrap my head around the fact that my parents had picked a poetry reading for my wedding. And there I was, in my wedding dress, all done up with makeup, flowers in my hands. They hadn't even told me beforehand not about the poetry, not about her brothers, not about her husband. They just let me stand there, freaking out until the music was supposed to start. I let myself worry that they were lost, or hurt, or maybe stuck somewhere. They let me cover the whole bill to keep things simple for them. I'll move the whole wedding, but it won't matter, I realized. I put my phone down at 3:45 and took a big breath. My best friend was still there, ready to catch me if I fell apart. "Would you," I started, my voice cracking, "walk me down?" He gave me a big grin without missing a beat. "Absolutely." So I walked with the guy who used to build tree forts with me in the backyard, the same one who helped me sew a Barbie dress when my sister was too busy laughing to help. The ceremony went on. Vows were exchanged. We put rings on each other's fingers. Everyone was cheering and clapping. There was a sob through it all. I grinned. I grinned until my face hurt. I was smiling so hard I wasn't even sure what was real anymore. I laughed at the jokes at the reception. I cut the cake myself under the string lights I put up. I danced with my new husband. Something cold and heavy settled in my chest. I went over to the little desk by the window. Later that night, once everyone had left and the hotel room door shut with a soft click, I turned on my laptop and settled in. My husband, still in his suit jacket, walked slowly toward me. He asked, "Are you sure about this?" My fingers were already flying over the keyboard, so I just nodded without even looking at him. "Yep." After a beat, he said softly, "You know, once you send it, it's done, no take-backs." I looked up then, finally giving him my full attention, and smiled for the first time that day. "Everything changes tomorrow." I didn't turn around after I hit send. They say you shouldn't dwell on the past on your wedding night. You're supposed to be looking ahead, hoping for new things, a fresh start. I tried to. But even as I snuggled up next to my husband under those thick hotel blankets, I couldn't stop thinking about my sister, and the years that came before. I was basically light years away from her, her being 3 years older and still in high school. She was one of those people everyone wanted to be near. The one with the designer clothes, perfect hair, and the easy laugh that made you feel lucky just to be in the same room. She wasn't nice. Not to those she didn't deem worthy, not to someone like me. I'd see it in the school hallways all the time, a little smirk. A whisper behind her hand. It was obvious sometimes, like if someone with second-hand shoes walked by, there'd be this fake, exaggerated cough. Other times it was super casual, almost too smooth to catch. But I definitely noticed when she'd laugh at me. I always picked up on it. Her parents acted like she was just picky. They'd say she had high standards. My mom even chimed in once, saying, "You can't expect her to be friends with just anyone." And after I broke down crying again, feeling left out, my dad would chime in with, "You gotta toughen up, kid. Not everyone's meant to be popular." Like it was my fault I wasn't as amazing as she was. She wasn't anything like me. I was fine with having a few close friends. I didn't crave all the attention. My best friend growing up lived right next door. We built crazy Lego cities and made up stories about superheroes who baked cookies instead of, saving the world. More often than I can count, he'd come running over, all excited with this carnival doll he'd won when we were 8, and we named it Captain Sprinkles. It was the funniest thing ever, at least to me. My parents didn't agree. My dad once said, loud enough for me to hear, that boys like that usually ended up weird. "It's no surprise he likes dolls more than football," my mom joked during dinner. It was so casual and dismissive, like they were just talking about the weather, not expressing anger. Their disappointment wasn't subtle. Not when I chose my quiet, quirky friends. Not when I'd rather read a book than put on makeup. It wasn't like there was one specific moment, but things shifted around the time my sister started hitting all the fancy parties, and I was stuck at home building my science fair projects. It felt like they just stopped expecting much from me and poured all their hopes into her. She became their golden child, homecoming queen, most likely to succeed the whole 9 yards. Every little thing she did right was a huge victory, something to brag about. And every awful thing she did? Oh, that was just her growing up, normal teenage stuff. I mean, they barely reacted when they found out she de-bullied another girl so badly the girl had to switch schools. They just shrugged it off like, teenagers, right? Girls are mean. But when I got a scholarship to a decent college, crickets, no bragging to the neighbors, no celebratory brunch, my mom just gave me this vague smile and said, "Well, you were always the quiet one." Like that explained it all. I was figuring something out back then, even though I didn't realize it at the time. Love in our family came with strings attached. For my sister, it was loud and flashy. For me, it was silence. They showed up for the performance, not the hard work. And when I stopped putting on a show for them, they just stopped paying attention. As we got older, the gap between us just kept getting bigger. Life was like a stage built just for her. Unpaid internships, jobs she'd quit, it didn't matter. No matter how many times she messed up, she always had a safety net. My folks are like all over her, congratulating her and apologizing to her, too. While all that was happening, I was working, hustling. I was on the night shift, packing up orders for my little online thing, conveniently forgetting that I was the one paying half the mortgage. When they told me I was lucky to still live there, I was the one paying the rent. Then I met my husband one summer. He was, solid, a couple of years older, and the first guy in ages I wasn't seeing through my sister's lens. He actually asked about my job instead of hers. He didn't talk over me. He really listened when I opened my mouth. He made me feel like I was, enough. Just like that, I fell for him hard. I saw it when she first met him, the look of, like, serious interest gone in a flash. Her smile just got bigger whenever she laughed. She got too close. She always used to twirl her hair when she liked a guy. Later, she tried to, bump into him without me around, and after that, she sent him a text. A casual, practiced invite to chill out together without the little sister tag along. Nothing super crazy. That should have been the end of it. But once he said no, politely, it wasn't. A few weeks later, she bawled her eyes out in front of my parents, saying she'd been hurt. Those were her exact words. "I saw him first. It wasn't fair. She was already seeing someone else, but it didn't even matter. It didn't matter that he was never even hers in the first place. In my family, how things seemed was way more important than what was actually happening. She was mad, so naturally I was the jerk. Maybe you should consider how your sister feels for once," she told me. "Family matters more than some guy." My dad agreed. Nobody asked how I felt. Nobody cared. Marriage was her safety net. He was loaded, dependable, and incredibly generous. Perfect if having the right last name on the wedding invitations mattered more than actual love. But behind closed doors, she never shut up. I settled. He's dull but rich. He thinks he hit the jackpot. Poor sap. I heard it all, the gossip and the casual cruelty. She cheated. Sometimes, after a few drinks, she bragged about it. My parents just laughed it off. Mom once said, waving her hand dismissively, "Marriage is complicated. Boys are sensitive." Dad said, "Let her have her fun." But I wasn't going to be the one quietly cleaning up her messes anymore. This time, somebody had to know what was really going on. Someone who hadn't been silently humiliated in private for years like me. Maybe it wasn't revenge. Maybe it was standing up for someone. Maybe I was just finally siding with the person nobody else ever did. Just once. I closed my laptop and took a deep breath. I wasn't saying sorry this time. Tomorrow would be a new day. My phone was vibrating against the nightstand when I woke up like it was trying to escape. I was still half asleep. I woke up, cracked one eye open, and saw a bunch of missed calls, 6 from home, 3 from mom, and 2 from some random number I didn't know. Honestly, I just ignored them. I rolled over, pulled the blanket over my head, and listened to the motel air conditioner drone on. That's how things were now. They'll text you if it's a total emergency. Sure enough, a text had come through. "What did you do? Fix this. We need to talk." I didn't even bother reading the rest. I just flipped the phone over and put it on the nightstand. My husband was starting to stir, shirtless, his hair a mess, his wedding ring catching the morning light. "Everything all right?" he mumbled. "Family stuff," I mumbled back, already drifting off. "It's gotta be Tuesday." He snorted and pulled the blanket over his head. Around mid-morning, I got the first real clue about what was up. My cousin, who was about as socially aware as a doorknob, texted me, "Yo, heard your sister's husband bilayed. Crazy family's losing it." Bilayed. That was one way to put it, I guess. Over the next few days, bits and pieces slowly started to fall into place, like a jigsaw puzzle that's all messed up and missing a ton of pieces. Apparently, my sister's husband had seen the message I sent. Or rather, the whole collection of screenshots, recordings, and all that stuff, after the poetry reading. The proof that she never valued him just hit him like a ton of bricks. After all he'd done helping her quit jobs she hated, breaking leases to escape bad situations, picking up the pieces of her broken dreams, she'd been mocking him behind his back and seeing someone else. I heard it wasn't some explosive fight, just this awful, heavy quiet. Like the calm before a storm, you know? The real damage didn't show right away, but within days, everything fell apart. My sister's husband just left, no drama, no big scene. By the end of the week, divorce papers were already filed. My parents had this unspoken safety net, one they never even admitted they relied on, and it just disappeared with him. He'd been helping them with their mortgage when unexpected expenses popped up, always polite about why they couldn't pay the full amount on time. Now, it was like someone shut off the tap they didn't even realize they were drinking from. I did what I had to do quietly. I canceled those automatic payments I'd set up 2 years ago for their emergency dental work, some of their utility bills, and that car lease I co-signed. I took my name off everything, even our joint emergency fund. I moved my money somewhere safe, somewhere I wouldn't feel guilty about using it. I didn't tell anyone. No fights, no arguments, just gone. Financial ruin, it doesn't happen overnight, you know. It's a slow burn. It started slowly, you know. I just kept ignoring those minimum credit card payments at first. Then the business bills piled up and I paid them late. Next thing I knew, suppliers weren't sending polite emails anymore, they were calling my bank. Then the bank totally shot me down. They flat out rejected my application for a second loan. It had been building for years, that lousy treatment from them, and it hit me all at once. It was a slow, awful decline. Little things, tiny betrayals, insults, and them just ignoring me, it all added up until the whole thing crumbled. I'd lie awake nights thinking about it. The silence, the emptiness, the strange ache of letting go of something I'd chased my whole life. I always pictured it like falling off a cliff, finally cutting ties with my parents. But it wasn't like that at all. It was more like someone had untied a huge weight from my ankle. I wasn't falling, I was just floating, lost. But that didn't make the pain go away. There were moments when the grief hit harder than I ever expected. Like when I was writing thank you notes after a party, and I almost wrote one to my parents automatically, before remembering they weren't even there. Or seeing that little mother of the bride frame in a shop, and my hand just reaching for it, like an idiot, thinking they'd actually care. And then there was that time some stranger smiled at my spouse and me and said, "You must have such supportive families," and I had to laugh because my family. They were only ever interested in themselves. After you get through people like that, you end up with this weird sense of humor that sticks with you, you know? It's not the kind that makes you bust out laughing, more like you're just totally worn out. And yeah, of course they'd send emails. It's the kind of coffee you down at some awful diner at 2 a.m., just thankful to be anywhere but where you were. Other things changed too. Quietly. I got pregnant about a couple of weeks after we got hitched. In the tiny hotel bathroom, my back pressed against the wall, my heart doing a crazy drum solo near my ears, I stared at the test. We hadn't planned it, it was earlier than we figured, but not exactly a surprise either. Everything felt a little off kilter as I sat there forever, my hands flat on the cold tile. The only thing my husband did when I told him was smile, pull me close, and say, "We're ready, you're ready." And I believed him. For the first time in ages, I kept my family in the dark, not even when the emails and texts started flooding in. Some news isn't for people who wouldn't be happy for you. Some things are too precious to let them use. Their situation got worse, meanwhile. I wasn't ignoring them, but I wasn't going to go looking for news either. Cousins were spreading rumors. Old neighbors were sending nosy texts. The family group chat, which was usually silent, suddenly came alive with second-hand worry. Businesses weren't making money. Some sellers pulled out of deals. Bills were starting to pile up. It started small, just missing a few payments, then the bigger ones. It wasn't a crisis yet. There weren't any court summons or foreclosure notices, but the pressure was building up like a crack in the glass. They weren't banging on my door, not yet anyway. That came later, when things got so bad that panic squashed my pride, but sometimes I wondered if they were even surprised. The quiet one didn't crack, which kind of shocked me. They'd never realized how much they'd relied on the invisible daughter. Evenings I spent at the kitchen table, staring at the paperwork for our new house. My partner, legs tangled with mine under the table, was looking through real estate listings. Sometimes my best friend from growing up would call. We'd laugh about the time we accidentally flooded his garage, building a water slide, and reminisce about the old neighborhood after the baby was born. We even started talking about traveling together, half joking. He never asked about my parents either. He didn't need to. The problem with real family is they know when you need to shut up to survive. Things started going sideways for my parents at the end of the third month after the wedding. Somehow their company's temporary closure for renovations just never ended. They quietly put their house up for early offers, saying they were downsizing for retirement. People started to notice. The invites stopped and the looks of pity started. It was this slow, quiet falling apart. No big fights or yelling matches like the way they'd wrecked my trust over the years. I just kept pulling away further and further. It wasn't like I was falling, more like I was flying. It was raining the day they showed up. Not a cute, gentle rain, but the kind that makes you wonder if you should build an ark, and then it just smashes against the windows. It was perfect, honestly. The doorbell went off not once, but 5 times, like someone was holding the button down. The sound made my husband freeze. We looked at each other from across the kitchen. We already knew who it was, thanks to the peephole. I peeked. They were there. Suitcases piled at their feet, their jackets soaked, and angry smirks plastered on their faces. My sister and my parents, like a pack of wolves. 3 faces I hadn't seen in ages were pressed up against the door. I took my time opening it, just stood there, taking deep breaths, my forehead resting on the door. My husband came up behind me and put his hand on my back quietly. "We can call them now," he said. "Not yet," I whispered. "Some things you gotta see for yourself before you can burn them to the ground." Without even a hello, they pushed past me. So I finally opened the door, and rain was dripping down the hardwood floor right there in the middle of the living room. My sister just tossed her bag down like she owned the place. Dad planted himself next to the TV. Mom gave this stiff little nod like she was expecting afternoon tea or something. Dad said, real serious, "We're not leaving." Then Mom chimed in all quiet like, "Not until you fix this." I carefully shut the door after them, my heart pounding. They jumped right in, a full-on attack. They wanted me to call my sister's husband, tell him I'd lied, say it was all jealousy and a big misunderstanding, a mean, nasty prank. "You ruined our lives," Mom screamed. Dad piled on, "You embarrassed this family." My sister joined in, yelling, "If it's the last thing you do, you're gonna fix this." Their voices were a crazy mix of fear, anger, and just plain despair, all shouting over each other. I just stood there, letting it wash over me. At that moment, I wasn't their daughter, I was just some problem they needed to solve. They even kicked at a broken vending machine, hoping for some candy to fall out. Dad laid it all out. "If you won't help, we're staying here until you do." He crossed his arms, daring me to argue. Mom started dividing up the rooms while he sat there on the couch, all heavy and grumpy. My sister just walked off to the guest room, dragging her suitcase behind her like it was already decided. I started laughing quietly. The whole thing was just so ridiculous. It wasn't funny, not at all. They just hadn't been paying attention. They thought I was still that girl they could just walk all over, take advantage of. "You're trespassing," I told them, but it was like I was speaking a different language. They just stared at me blank-faced. My mom said, "You invited us," all sweet and high-pitched, trying to act innocent. "I didn't even tell you where I live," I said. Behind me, my husband was already on the phone. I could hear him talking to someone, using that polite, professional voice he uses for serious stuff. My dad took a step towards me, all threatening. "You don't call the cops on your family," he growled. "Funny," I said, giving him this weak little smile. I thought families didn't ditch you on your wedding day. The silence after that was thick and awkward. I saw real fear in my mom's eyes for the first time, just a flicker, but it was there. It didn't take long. About 15 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Two cops, totally polite and professional. I just pointed at my parents and sister, showed them my ID and the lease with only my husband's and my name on it. I barely had to say a word. The officers asked them to leave, gave them a little time to gather their things. Of course, my sister started screaming at me, saying I was heartless and destroying what little family we had left. My mom was crying. My dad muttered threats under his breath. But finally they left, lugging their soggy bags back out into the rain with those two incredibly patient cops just watching them go. I just flopped onto the couch, completely wiped out. The door clicked shut behind them and my spouse settled down beside me, all warm and quiet. Then bam, the baby gave a little nudge. That's family right there, not them. We moved later, found a place farther out, closer to the life we really wanted. We didn't even bother sending change of address cards. Most people didn't know where we were. Every now and then, my best friend and his wife would show up with funny gifts and stories about their travels, their late-night foodie adventures. That's what I'd always pictured my life, with my parents being like simple, supportive, and free. But I built that life somewhere else. I made it better, you know. I heard bits and pieces through mutual friends and distant relatives. My parents' fancy house, the one they bragged about constantly, sold for way less than they wanted. The company they worked for skipped town, blaming everyone but themselves. And my sister, Miss Perfect, is now bouncing from couch to couch. I didn't reach out. Not after the divorce was final, not when they filed for bankruptcy. Not when all their social media stuff disappeared, poof, like spilled wine on a dusty floor. I'd figured cutting them off would feel like losing a limb, like tearing a piece of myself away. But it didn't. It was like finally realizing you were never broken, that you were already standing up the whole time. You were just sitting in the wrong seat. That little mint green onesie is still folded in a drawer. The very first one I ever bought. The story I was scared to even whisper about. Finally, I realized I didn't need them to pat me on the back. My kid will never be raised thinking love is something you get for being a good kid in their home. She'll never feel like she's less than. She'll know what family really means. The crazy thing is, they won't even know her name. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far, if it was really necessary to make that point, to cut them off and call the police. But then I remember who I used to be. The girl who always let things slide. The one who never quit trying. And I also see that I didn't really go far enough. They just never thought I'd actually do anything. I'd love to know what you think, though. Did I do the right thing?